Yeah, I was talking to a family friend who owns a media company, and he was saying, I think 10, 15 years ago, that person came in with the idea of Canva, talking to them about it. And then they said to her, like, realistically, like, if you really want to have success with this, go over east to Sydney. And then they ended up going to California to start it.
Wow.
I thought Canva you just used to like edit the thumbnail and stuff.
But it was this person that came to them and their idea was, we want to be able to make graphic design computerized and accessible to everyone to use really
Yeah.
easily and share all these designs.
Or like Photoshop.
Yeah, but Canva's just free on Google.
There's like
right.
there's a better version. You know, there's a subscription
There's
one
like the premium. But
yeah, exactly.
There always is. Yeah, okay, interesting. But like making films on Canva.
Oh, I think it's mainly just graphic design.
Just graphic design, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's an interesting story. To me, it's interesting when someone picks up everything and leaves. Like, especially going somewhere. It's ballsy, yeah. It's a big risk. I suppose you'd have to be pretty confident that it's the right thing to do.
What are your thoughts on getting out of your comfort zone?
I probably don't do it enough. That's the first thing. But this is something I've been thinking about, is when there's a easier option and a harder option, I think for the most part, I choose the harder option just because based off experience or really a guess, it usually yields kind of better results for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you guys? Do you feel like you choose the harder option or?
Well, I think for real growth to happen, you have to get out of your comfort zone, because if you're comfortable, you don't really have that heat or pressure behind you pushing you towards a deadline. And that's where procrastination starts to really kick in.
Yeah, I'm a serial procrastinator.
I think everyone is. I don't think anyone's not.
I've never met anyone who, just in my experience, I've never met anyone who procrastinates on the level that I at least used to.
But is it healthy? There's healthy procrastination. Like you can go do stuff that, you know, obviously you can procrastinate on TikTok for hours, or you can procrastinate by, I'm going to go for a surf, like maybe in your situation, or I'm going to do this instead of, I don't know. What are your procrastination? What are your activities when you procrastinate? What do you do?
I've got a good one on this. When we were reading Atomic Habits, we did an episode on Atomic Habits with Fletch.
Okay.
And we didn't talk about this, but in the book it talks about the difference between motion and action. And motion can be planning how you're going to do it and all of these sorts of things. And then action's actually going and doing it. And as much as motion, you can plan to a T how to do something, you're never actually going to learn and have the growth unless you're doing the action of doing it. And motion almost becomes a form of procrastination.
Say that last part again. Like what do you mean by motion almost becomes a form of procrastination? I just didn't quite get that.
When you start planning everything and planning how you're going to do it. So say I sit there and I plan exactly how I'm going to do everything throughout the week.
That's procrastinating.
And I spend 5 hours doing that on a Sunday when I could have spent that 5 hours doing something that I actually would have got growth from.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm only going to be able to speak for myself, obviously, but I quite like, or not that I like it, I just naturally probably do that. I like to just sit and sort of think. I've heard people talk about it as like wandering. And to me, that isn't procrastination. Like I've nothing wrong with that. If I have things that I urgently need to do and I don't do them, then that for me
that's procrastination.
That's just, for me, that's what I find to be procrastination. And when I said I used to be a really bad procrastinator, like when I was in school, and just maybe doing things I wasn't super keen on, I would set an alarm for 3 a.m. of the day of an assignment.
Oh, God.
And I would wake up and just work until it was done.
So you needed the pressure of like this is due.
I needed the pressure. That's just how I am. It has to be like a high stakes situation for some reason.
I understand that. I don't know. It makes you work. It's a weird thing. And obviously that's obviously
instinct.
that's obviously it is human instinct, but that's obviously very, not super healthy, but like, you know, you put yourself in a situation where it's almost like, what do they always say? Fight or flight. Like you almost just have to go, and it's not even a question of like, I can just open up a tab on YouTube or whatever. Like you have to.
Have to.
You have
in a
to
way, it's putting yourself out of your comfort zone. to do that.
Yeah, I guess.
And it's embarrassing to say that, like, and it's something that I've definitely had to change, right? I know you guys have talked a bit about sleep, and that doesn't really work. Those two aren't.
Yeah.
You can't have both. But I think, if I can look at it as what is maybe a positive, is that I do get it done. Like I always have, even
that's
if
what matters at the end
It
of the day.
I suppose so. Yeah.
I remember being in the same situations, and you're just so locked in, and it's bizarre because you've never been that locked in before. But
but now
deadlines are
changing to things that I actually want to learn about. I don't feel like I have to do that, right?
Yeah. It's not a chore.
It's not a chore. I can start earlier because I actually want to start earlier.
What would you procrastinate by doing though? What were your major, I guess, distractions? Is it just being social or?
That is the worst, by the way, when you're procrastinating by socializing. For me, the worst because it ruins something that I love so much.
Yeah.
Like I love chatting with people. I'll chew their ear off. But when you need to do something and you're just in like this 2-hour conversation, I hate that feeling. But what would I do to procrastinate? A lot of the time I would watch movies.
Yeah, right.
Watch YouTube, I suppose all like the normal things. For that time of my life, it was never social media because I didn't have it for a long time. Nowadays it is more that because I have it, I kind of felt like it'd be a good thing to have as someone who does media-related work.
Well, how long did you procrastinate before starting your business? Was there a long period of time where you wanted to start it where you just couldn't get into action?
Honestly, no, I was pretty quick on that one. I finished uni. I went traveling for a little while. And then it was more that every day that I couldn't start it, I was feeling a bit of anxiousness, I was nervous to start it, but once I started it, I did feel a bit better. But I didn't really procrastinate on that one, to be honest.
Because it's something you enjoy.
Yeah, exactly.
More, so it's easier to do.
Yeah, it was like, I'm young. I started it when I was 21. Yeah, 21. Same age as I am now.
Well, your passion is clearly film. You've talked about that to us behind the camera. But what type of services apart from film do you provide for businesses?
Look, it changes and it's flexible. But what I can do well is tell emotional stories. That's what I'm good at. Don't know why, just am.
You're an emotional guy.
Maybe, yeah. So in whatever form that takes, I suppose that's what I'm offering is the ability to make people feel something with video. And it can be something as simple as, I'm glad I got to know that person, right? Let's say like one of the businesses that I do work for is they do skin cancer checks. And they just want people to know who they are and what they're about. And they're such a lovely person that the benefit of having something like a video that says, hi, I'm Christine and I run, a business where I check people's skin, because most of the time the doctors who do that, there's too much of a wait list. So something like that, for me, even though it's not like super emotional, that's kind of what I offer. And then in a more like typical sense, I could take photos and do pieces to camera, that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much what it is. Documentaries.
Well, I've been following your sort of stories or the reels you've been posting on your Instagram, where you've kind of been explaining the whole process as you go, and it's really raw, but it's really, I think it's got a lot of value in it because it's showing without all the flash and all the just the picture perfect moments what it's like to go on the journey, and I think it's really awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of, without spilling the secret sauce, that is kind of the goal.
Is to be authentic.
Be authentic, yeah. I mean, like I said, I was off social media for a while and I got back and it was kind of the same of like, shit, it's just bullshit, right? It's just so much fake stuff. And maybe you could say the same for these updates that I do, but I at least try my best to tell people the truth. Some things I can't say, sometimes it's just too personal.
Too authentic.
Too authentic. But I try my best. So, I mean, to give the people watching an example that you would have seen is there's times where, even as someone who I do really try to back myself and kind of believe in myself, there's times where when it comes down to it and I'm looking at you in the eye, like you're a potential client or someone that I'm going to work with, and I really like you and I want you to do well, truly. I have no interest in, scraping money off you. So I'll say a number that's too low, right? I'll underprice myself. And that's, from what I can understand, the most kind of common mistake that small businesses make is underpricing. And I'll tell people that. I'll say, today I underpriced. And it was and then I got home and I went, oh, I have all this work to do. I'm not going to be paid enough for it. But, you learn and hopefully you grow and not make those mistakes again.
You also build the relationships and the portfolio of the clients that you can then network. So I know we talked about the word networking before the cameras went on. But it really is a thing where once you get a reputation with your business, the sky's really the limit.
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose that is a big part of it, is just how do people actually feel about you? Would they want to work with you? And that's just kind of personal choice, I suppose. But for me, I feel like at least if I'm honest about this is who I am, and this is what I like, this is what I don't like, then I save myself going down a path with someone who just isn't the right fit for me, potentially, because that is a part of it is, am I fit for them, but also are they fit for me? What do you guys think about that?
No, this is so completely off topic, but I'm just remembering because obviously we went to school together.
Yeah,
you've got the headphones on in a way where it's like, obviously you've got this wonderful, wonderful head of hair now, but like you've got your headphones on in a way that it's almost like your hair from school, like your short hair is kind of like if you took just inside, you know what I'm talking about? Like just inside the headphones, like, oh, look, it's a Nic from school. Yeah. And then if you take them off and this hair flows out anyway, but
different person.
Completely random. Anyway.
That's fine.
That was just what was on my mind. But
gotcha. I think there is real power in saying no. The power to say no and have some self-respect and to be able to know your limits or to be able to set your price and not lower it. And that's a skill that's developed.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people are really probably good at it out of the gate, but they're going to come with other things. Like they might be cocky.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but maybe.
And you have the pressure to do obviously, of course, you're doing a good job, but like if you set your price super high, you then put that pressure on yourself, like, okay, I've overcharged here. Like, gee, what can I do to really make up that?
100%.
I'd almost rather be unders than overs. I don't know about you. Like, I'd rather be unders and do a good job and build up your reputation that way and have people go, yeah, look, it was a pretty good deal and they did a good job for the price.
That's an approach, is the whole like undersell, over deliver.
Well, how have you found the whole process of kind of selling yourself and your business to clients and pitching yourself? Has that been a big learning curve where you now know things now that if you knew when you first started, you would have gone about it differently?
Yeah, definitely. But I suspect it'll be like that the whole way, from the start to the end, whenever that is you constantly feel like, bugger, I wish I'd done that differently. With also keeping in mind that, you have to just look to the future a little bit. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's specific things that I kind of wish I'd done differently. You asked me a bit about selling myself. I can't do that. Like it's not.
Yeah, that's really hard. Hey,
not my thing, I suppose.
Yeah,
not deliberately, at least, right? So, and I kind of realized that by having, I had a pitch. It went fine. I'd prepared a lot. Pitching a business, this is what I think the kind of videos that you should be posting, and I'd like to make them for you. And it was just a lot of me talking, which is not me. Like I was trying to be a salesman. Here's option A and B and C and which one.
Yeah.
And there's merit in aspects of that for sure. But like natural me is when it comes to like a real problem solving situation, which is kind of what businesses are, I suppose, is just let me listen, hear the problem, sit with it. And then if I even think I have a solution, then I'll offer you one. So yeah, there was one, I'll give you a story if you're interested. There was one time where it was a Friday afternoon and I was out shooting something. Prospectively, like I thought this might be beneficial for one of my clients. And this guy came up to me when I was filming and we started chatting. And at one point he goes, I run this painting business, been meaning to do social media stuff for a while. And this was really early days. And I was like, go, this is what we could, like, I would be really interested in helping you, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I could just see him going, oh, nah. No.
Another pitch.
Yeah, another pitch. And I was like, oh, God, why did I even do that?
But it seemed like he was looking for it, but maybe he wasn't.
Yeah, maybe, like, there's certain things that, for everyone it's different, of course. But for me, I found that maybe just one or two kind of sentences might help me. And that's something like, how do you think I might be able to help you?
It's different audiences and different people like different stuff. And it's probably hard to decipher if you're going to give a presentation to, someone who's more creative or more right-brained or left-brained, or that's, I don't know, I'm sure that's something that's difficult. It's hard to read the room sometimes if you're going to, which is why it's almost better to start if you're, I don't know, I'm not in this area of having to sell myself, but if it starts with almost like a natural conversation, you get an idea of what they're into, what sort of personality, what sort of characteristics they show, and then you're like, okay, well, almost thinking to yourself, this is how I'm going to pitch it. Like maybe they're more empathetic, or maybe they're more analytical, or I don't know. People that have that flexibility, it's almost like being a chameleon. And some people might say it's, inauthentic, but having that ability to kind of be flexible enough to pitch an idea or have a conversation with someone that's in their interest. I mean, obviously it's in your interest, but, just with the way you word it as well, like,
yeah,
informal, formal. I don't know. We're living in an interesting world as well, where things are going from very formal to informal. I feel as generations, older generations move on and younger people come into these jobs. And
well, there's two things that come to mind. The first one is that most of my potential business is older people, not people our age. So, for example, you guys might relate to this. Our generation, and this is something I learned. We're not so good at like face-to-face stuff, or when it comes down to something serious, confrontational, let's say. Yeah, correct. We don't really want to make that call. We'd rather just send the text. So that's
a good point, actually.
So if I call a client and say, hey, this is going to be a bit late, or I'm really happy with this, have a look, or whatever it might be, they tend to really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing, to answer your question as well about like selling myself, is that I said it in one of the updates, I'd just rather have my work kind of do the talking, even though I'm a chatty person.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, and that's something that I suppose I'm lucky with, pursuing something related to film and cinema, that people can just watch it and be like, oh, yeah, that's good, or oh, that's terrible.
You have tangible evidence of your work. You're like,
yeah,
look, well, I could tell you all about it, but this is what I did for
Let me show you.
This comparable company.
Yeah.
And these were the results.
It's better to show than to tell.
I think so.
Sometimes, yeah.
Actions are a lot more powerful than words when showing on something, or
yeah, it's true.
Showing your perspective, a point of view, instead of just arguing or trying to come across.
Yeah.
And another one is body language.
Yeah,
I remember reading something about how 80% of what a person interprets from you is not actually what you're saying. It's your body language and your demeanor and how you come across.
Jeez, yeah. Hearing that makes me think that, when I'm having a meeting of some kind, I realistically, you get to it and maybe you're a bit nervous or whatever, and you can't only focus on one or two things, right? And you can improve, or at least this is what I find, that I can maybe improve on one thing and maybe, I fix that and try and work on another thing. Like, I'm going to have, my 3 options this time. I want to make sure I drive that home. And then the other thing I'll forget to do. So it's kind of like, it is a bit of a balancing act, I think. But maybe it just, because it kind of does come down to that old saying of like, practice makes perfect.
Well, I want to talk to you about film in general. And that's a pathway that you obviously did at school.
Yeah.
And you found a passion for it in your later years at school, and then you knew exactly, because I think there's also a lot of, and I might not be the one to talk to this because, people might say that I fell into this trap, but doing something outside of school. There's a lot of pressure to go.
Well, you're
down
doing a
certain
podcast,
pathway.
man.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And then this is
cool.
kind of like a breakaway from the norm. But like, there is obviously this concept of like, okay, what can you do that's going to get you a job versus what can you do that you're going to enjoy? And I feel like we live in a world also, and that's a very traditional saying as well, because there's more and more opportunity, like potentially in film, potentially in, you know, digital marketing, in media and whatever. Like we live in a world where, and we're going to live in a world where there's going to be so many more jobs in that area, and almost less jobs, or proportionately less jobs in your classic law and finance and whatever. So now it's like, you know, when you leave school, and I hope schools are starting to do this, and I feel like they are, but you know, they're not pushing down those traditional pathways and saying, look, this is where the money is. This is where the money has been traditionally. This is, you know, what you should focus on. But also lots of people don't even feel that pressure, and they go, well, this is stupid. Like if I'm going to do film, if I want to do film, I'm passionate about it. And like you say, you're passionate about it. You never procrastinated on it. I'm sure like when you had a film project at school, you were like, I'm going to prioritize this over mathematics.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I don't know. Speak about that. Speak about choosing something that you like straight away out of school, not, you know, chopping and changing too much, just going, okay, that's what I want to do.
Well, I suppose I did. It wasn't that as clear cut as I've made it. So when I started, I did something completely different for 6 months, and then it was more traditional. And then I said to myself, if I can pass, then I'll do film.
Yep.
So I'm not kind of running away from it. But I suppose honestly, hearing that, it's just interesting to me that whether that's true or not, that just to hear that maybe schools and the whole kind of setup is a bit more open to different kinds of work nowadays.
I think they're getting better. I don't know. I can't speak to schools now because we've been out of school for a little bit now. But
well, I think you break the norm because, especially with going down waste and then a degree, it's shaping you into be the best employee, not an employer.
Yeah.
But then to come out and start your own business and be an employer.
Yeah.
It's already breaking that norm of following school.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I think that probably comes back down to, well, part of it is that I really like movies. You know, I grew up and I commend you guys for reading books because I try to do more of it. But for me, it was just always, I'm supposed to be more impatient, and I just went movies. That clicks for me.
I do love movies as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, me too.
But I can either go and work at a media company, let's say, and learn the ropes, and there's definitely value in doing that, I'm sure. Or at least in my mind, the harder option is just start one myself. So I was like, I'm going to choose the harder option. And maybe that, you know, if I was to pat myself on the back a little bit, it takes a bit of courage, and it does take a bit of bravery. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this podcast with you guys right now. In 2 years, this business could be, you know, a flop. That's the reality of it.
Not after this podcast. It's not possible to fail.
I'll try everything I can.
After being on the Crooked Smile podcast, yeah.
I'll try everything
Major plug.
Massive platform, massive launchpad, career launchpad.
I mean, that is something is that I do tell people about it, which is, again, like, it's scary, you know, saying doing a business, this is what it is. Because, yeah, as I said, 2 years down the road, it might not work out. But I suppose I have some faith that people will have it in their heart to go, well, you know what, at least you tried.
Like you got that under your belt every day, every next day that you're doing this sort of thing. You're learning something new, I'm sure.
For me, at least, I didn't have the resilience and persistence to continue doing something that I didn't like. Just none of that. And, you know, I listened to Fletcher the other day say I was doing neuroscience and I was hating it, but I spoke to someone important to me and they said keep going. So I did, and it was worth it. I think maybe my tolerance for that is potentially less. And I think about people who are really good at something, how many of them spend time doing things that aren't valuable to getting to their ultimate goal. And maybe it's a lot of them. I don't know. I'm sure there's some aspects of successful people where they're like, you know what, it's work I've got to do. You know, if you want to start a successful accounting firm, I might really like helping people, but there's some document filling in during the day that I hate. But my guess would be that, at least for the people that I look up to, is that if they know that something isn't on the path to what they want, then they're willing to go, I'll change it and do something else. Does that kind of resonate with you guys at all? Or
Absolutely.
yeah?
Making the change now rather than waiting and going, oh, let's just
Beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah. I suppose that is what it is, yeah. I sometimes feel like I have conversations sometimes with people doing engineering or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And there's always that grass is greener on the other side thing of like you're doing something more creative or not. And the reason I do the air quotes for creative is because, you know, every job you have to be creative at times.
Yeah.
Like I've met people who study engineering who are extremely creative. It's just, that's how it is. To me, there's a difference with something like film, let's say. It's more about, in my mind, it's more about expression. It's like, I feel like there's a part of me that, or my thinking that I want to express for whatever reason. I want it to be out there. And the fact that I want to do that, it's kind of like, well, if you like the stuff I make, then cool. And if you don't,
Well, then it's not for you.
it's not for you. And
It's like our podcast.
exactly, right? So
Well, that's art at the end of the day.
Art. Are we creating art right now?
I think so. If you want to express yourself and get something like off your sort of creative chest, then yeah, I'm like, do it. But if someone
artists.
also tells me that's annoying, shut up, I don't like it, then I'm like, fair enough, you know.
Well,
It's not for you.
this is kind of what we talked about when we were first starting it, and when it came to like the podcasts and even just putting like episodes on our normal Instagram stories and putting it out there every week. And I had this conversation with Johnny of, whether people want to see our stories every week of
If
podcasts.
people want to get like the constant, I'm sick of this. Like I'm naturally more inclined to tune out and not watch this than.
But this is when I said, well, if people don't want to see us posting what we're doing on our story every week, if it's something we're passionate about and doing every week, and people don't want to see that and don't want to follow us, if we put that on our story every week, well, then they can unfollow us. Like, it's not for them.
Yeah.
Which
If
is
they're
great.
really our friends or they really care about us, then they don't have to come and watch the podcast every week, but they're not going to unfollow us if they see us doing something we enjoy doing.
I agree. So I just like being expressive, and I always am happy for people if they're doing the same thing.
Well, I have a question for you about your filmmaking. So we watched your short story before this,
Verge.
and it was very storytelling orientated.
Yeah.
And a question I had is, when it comes to storytelling in film, what's your stance on cinematography versus verbal storytelling with characters or stories?
Like a show don't tell kind of thing again question as well.
Yeah.
Because what's the director of Blade Runner, Denis Villeneuve or whatever?
Denis Villeneuve.
You might
He's
know
the director
more than
of
me.
Dune as well.
Yeah, the director of Dune,
know,
Blade Runner, all those. He talks about how for him cinematography is how a story should be told with movies, and less dialogue and more like shots that emphasize like big spectacles or meaningfulness through that
And
way.
you can tell when you watch Dune, right? Because that's like a
Or Blade
cinematic-
Runner 2049
Like the
as well.
story building in Dune is ridiculous.
It's
right?
incredible.
It's just
And it's cinematography story building.
I suppose it did come from words though, right?
yeah. That's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
Actually,
But what are my thoughts on visual storytelling versus more like audible storytelling?
Someone's
talking,
And the show don't tell idea.
Or is it a combination?
which is it's a media cliche, right? Show don't
It is
tell.
a media cliche. I was going to
Yeah.
say that to people. That show don't tell is kind of something that we hear a lot in the film world. What do I think about it? Honestly, just in terms of my personal taste, I really like both. So I equally enjoy something like Dune, which is just so dialogue kind of minimal, and the visuals do tell the story. It kind of, I don't know. It's sort of.
It's so grandiose, right? Like that could have been no dialogue in that movie, and you're watching it, and you're at the cinema with the ridiculous audio and the widescreen action. You're like, what's going on in this? And you could have like it's almost like it was a cinematic marvel, and you had to appreciate it without
really sets
any
the mood of the film.
without any words.
Yeah,
Really
that
inspiring.
maybe that's part of the power of something like movies is just the ability to see something and just feel something so intensely. I loved Dune 2, like the feeling of when, I can't even remember the main character. Is it Paul?
Paul Atreides.
Yeah, he's riding the earthworm thing. It was incredible. I loved it. So I do recognize that side of things. I equally love good writing. So it's the cliche, but someone like Quentin Tarantino, his writing, you know, he'll have two gangsters talking about burgers, and I love it.
Classic.
You know, I'm hanging on to every word. There's many others, but that's just the first one.
Favorite Tarantino film?
Oh,
We haven't spoken enough about film on the podcast. It's good.
I'd have to go Inglourious Bastards, I think.
I like Reservoir Dogs.
for me, it's Pulp Fiction, if I'm being honest. I've just watched it the most number of times, I think. But something like that, and a little bit, this might be something that's less obvious to people who aren't in it, and potentially interesting, hopefully, is that writing dialogue that reflects real world experience, at least for most people, is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Right? So even just in film, it's just, this is something I've found at least, trying to make something that feels realistic is just very difficult for some reason. Maybe it's as simple as, you know, there's nuances in human behavior and that kind of thing, but it's a weird thing. Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up a great example, and I think you'd probably be passionate about these films. I'm hoping you'd like these films. But I recently watched the Before trilogy, so like Before Sunrise, Before Sunset. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. But
some of the most natural dialogue I've ever seen on screen. It's Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, French girl. So the story is that they are like on a train. This probably doesn't happen these days anymore because everyone's on their phones listening to their music with their headphones on. But they're both reading, and then they just start talking. Like they look up, start talking to each other, and it kicks off this, you know, dramatic night where they get off the train in Vienna, and you know, but it
sounds romantic.
Well, yeah, they're just walking through Vienna. No action, nothing crazy is happening.
Yeah.
All it is just this dialogue between two people, but it's so, like, it seems like a conversation that, and they were about, I think in the movie they're about our age or a bit older, but it's like, you know, such an accurate representation of what people at our age kind of talk about, or what lots of people talk about at our age, which is like stupid, sometimes weird, like almost like existential shit. And then it's like, you know, talking about purpose, and then they're just talking about, you know, they're also joking and being immature. And it's some of the most, I couldn't believe it, because as you say, like, it's weird. We can sit here and have these conversations, and I'd say this, you know, pretty natural conversations. But when it comes to encapsulating that, lots of writers can't do that, I feel, which is bizarre, because I think they just fall into cliche, and which I mean, makes sense, right? Like
the difference between the good films and the great films is the ability to storytell.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's an interesting one, because
I feel like they can all storytell.
Well,
but with the magic that you were just talking about, capturing that magic.
For me, that holds true in a lot of ways. But for a lot of, like, more, you know, cinephiles, which some of them are just snobs, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But some films aren't really stories. They're not, at least, like, linear narratives. And even Pulp Fiction's not a linear narrative.
Interesting.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Probably Reservoir Dogs isn't either. Or maybe there is a story, but it's just muddled up.
But Pulp Fiction is the classic example of the, what's it called, non-linear storyline.
Yeah. But then there's other films like, have you heard of Zone of Interest?
No, but I need to watch that.
So it's a film about, or a movie about the house that was next to Auschwitz.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
I've seen the trailer for this. I've seen the trailer.
And it's Rudolph Hess's family. Yeah. Oh, my God.
So pretty harrowing story, or situation, actually.
Oh, my God.
But this film, there's no like narrative. You know, it's just kind of 2 hours of being with and in this house. So you do see things, right? Like, you'll see one of these generals come to his house and take off his boots, and they're covered in blood or whatever it might be. Spoilers. But it's sort of just 2 hours of sitting with that. And it wasn't for me, right?
It wasn't for you?
It wasn't for me, but one of my best friends and a fellow filmmaker loves it. And that's kind of one thing which I suppose I was trying to make a point there, is that at least if you watch a lot of Hollywood, it does kind of prioritize storytelling, and generally films do. But there's also a lot of people who aren't that fussy about whether it makes sense or not. And it can be surprising to kind of really realize that, like, as I said, with Zone of Interest, you know, I hated it. I was bored.
Yeah, right.
But my friend loved it. And equally, I love Mad Max Fury Road, which you could argue there's no story there as well.
Just world building.
Just world building. But my friend hated it, you know, and that's also kind of a confronting realization as someone who's trying to make something creative.
Not everyone's going to like it.
Not everyone's going to love it. I know it's kind of a cliche, but it's true.
No, but how lucky are we that we can live in a world with, you know, people with different filmmaking, you know, passions and characteristics and abilities. Well, and like obviously it comes from probably a personal spot, but you can go and watch, and I'm worried that that's going to become the blockbuster sort of film is the one that seems to appease most people. So, you know, lots of, and garners the most money.
Yeah.
So lots of people are going towards that area and you're losing kind of like the indie film.
That's the problem.
I guess.
People these days are chasing the box office numbers and not the actual art itself. And it's kind of like the music industry as well with a lot of movies where they're trying to create this big blockbuster that's going to make all this money and then they forget to actually have a piece of art that's actually meaningful and they lose a lot of people in the process of it.
But I feel like movies always will have...
Kind of like Disney at
like
the
they
moment.
still have lots of... I feel like obviously there's the blockbusters, but there's still a lot of, like more so than music, I reckon, that there's a lot of recognizable...
I mean, look how they ruined Star Wars. That sucks, man. I'm a big Star Wars fan. And Robbie, we were talking about Robbie earlier as well. Him and me both love Star Wars. Star Wars and Lord of the Rings are the two things we love more than anything.
But was that trilogy ever going to be good? Like,
no, but it's even now,
greatest...
or the TV series. It's just...
Yeah, money.
Did you like The Mandalorian?
I think the first season was good.
Yeah.
But the second season became very repetitive.
But also fans are screaming out for more content. They're like, oh, we need more Star Wars universe. And then it comes out, they're like, fuck, I don't know, I hate that. Take it back.
But it's like they're addressing a whole different target audience now.
Yeah.
I've forgotten the fans.
There are, that's a broad statement. I don't know how to respond, but I can say that there's people who always, they want to hate the film.
Yeah.
True.
That's a part of it. It's
true.
Some people just want to say that sucked.
They get a kick out of it. Hey,
yeah, or someone else says it sucked, and they like that person, so now it sucks. You know, I didn't like it. But so if I'm being honest, for me, I liked Mandalorian season 1. I agree, season 2 kind of dropped off for me. But I was this is kind of random, but I was pitching a new film the other day, which has actually been greenlit, so it's going ahead.
Nice,
congrats.
Any more information we can get? Or
I will tell you little bits, but. It's a kind of about walking, another documentary. You know, I was pitching it to some younger people and one of them said, that's boring. You know, walking's boring. And it kind of comes with a bigger package of like, it's not just, it is about walking, but maybe there's a bit more to it, right? You'd hope.
Like The Verge.
Like The Verge, right? So for those who don't know, Verge Collection is a short documentary that I kind of came up with and directed. And we went and talked to people about their Verge Collection items and asked them about their stories.
That's cool. Yeah.
So, you know, this person says walking's boring. And I suppose I had the choice to go, well, screw you, you know, because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting, just me personally. But it also raises an important marketing question of how do I make this something that people will want to watch?
Yeah.
And for example, people who've seen Verge, they'll watch it, I think, because they know that I can present you with something that is boring and make it interesting.
And it's been shortlisted for awards, right? So you mentioned briefly Verge?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, Verge Collection, well, we won some awards.
Yeah, awesome.
We won People's Choice Award and Best WA Short Film at a competition in Perth, which is really cool.
Is there any chance we can link it to the viewers of this, or it might be a bit too hard?
I feel so silly. Unfortunately, I can't, just because we're submitting it to other festivals.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so it can't be public, otherwise there's no...
Well, one day when it's public.
When it is public,
I really like
when it's on Amazon Prime.
I really like the scene with the chair where you start doing the flashbacks with the projector of the army on the chair.
Yeah.
I think that was sick.
Yeah, thank you. That's something that we're taking massively into the next film is we're going to have, I'm going to say basically because it is kind of a complicated thing to explain, but we're going to have someone walking in front of a projection and then they kind of enter what's actually being projected, if that makes sense.
Ooh.
So that's just a little.
Don't
something.
don't tell too much.
exciting.
Don't tell too much.
Maybe
teasing.
that at least
Teaser trailer.
that gets me excited at least. But yeah,
That turns you on, that sort of thing.
yeah. Exactly.
Oh, Jesus. Well, on the Envyus Media, with your kind of journey and those posts, you've talked about trying to get filmmaking and the stuff you really enjoy, integrating that as much as possible into your work.
Yeah.
So how have you found ways to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still figuring it out. It's not, a done deal yet for that question. I think part of it for me has been the preparation. If I give myself time to prepare, then I can challenge myself in different ways. And then the other part of it is just time. As time goes by and maybe my clientele changes or whatever it might be, then hopefully I'm able to do more of that film side as opposed to like videography, let's say. But part of it is what I do. It's like how do I spend my time, which is why, I am going, okay, for this next 6 months, I will just maybe not try and get more clients and just do my best with the ones I can, make sure I'm still providing value to them, but make another film. That's kind of part of it. It's just you do have to do it. No one's going to do it for me, So yeah, that's, I suppose, how I kind of try and find the balance.
I'm a huge fan of the cinematic storytelling.
Okay.
So I really like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
I really like the new Batman movie with Matt Reeves.
What did you like about that? About the Batman?
I wasn't big on the Batman movie.
Well, for me, I'm a big Batman guy.
Yeah, okay.
And Batman, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Classics. But
Big franchise guy over here.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't so much like the way I explain it is probably The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger is the best movie out of all the Batmans.
That is amazing.
But the Batman with Robert Pattinson is the best Batman movie.
Yeah, right.
So the way it tells the story, like even just with the start, with him doing the monologue about fear and showing all these like people on Halloween night scared of him, and it's just building this intense scene and you don't know when he's going to pop out. And then he finally pops out at the train station. Yeah. And it's just kind of, it's the most relatable to like the comics. Like
have you read the comics?
I've watched a lot of the cartoons growing
sick.
up.
Yeah.
Because they used to be on like Cartoon Network and stuff, like Batman the Bold and all of
still see those if you go into like cartoon.
Well, they're all on Amazon Prime, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually,
or Stan. It's Amazon Prime or Stan. One of them.
I think Amazon Prime it might be.
Yeah,
I feel
and
like I've seen ads.
It's just the way it tells the story of the Batman and portrays the character, and it's like the grudgy, grimy, dark Gotham and just the world building for that universe.
Yeah.
And the cinema shots, and it's all just super long and intense, and it's not very dialogue driven. At times it kind of picks up on the dialogue, but a lot of the time it's just him going from place to place on a motorcycle or the car chase with the penguin.
That car chase was cool.
And then when he comes out off the ramp through the fire and the
cool.
music all like drops and then it just picks up.
Yeah.
Like the soundtrack for that movie was just awesome.
Yeah. Revived Nirvana for a new
I'm really excited to see what they do with that series with the next one and how
there is a next one, right? Yeah.
I really
what do you think of it, Johnny?
Well, like I really like what you said about, and that this is almost like this is like why I obviously liked The Dark Knight so much more, and I think everyone loves The Dark Knight. But that wasn't. I love that because that, as you say, that didn't fall into the Batman. Like
it was a Christopher Nolan.
It was a Christopher Nolan film, and it's that's great that you got a director in. Like I don't know what they expected. Like they expected Christopher Nolan to follow convention and do like a classic Batman movie where the guy gets the. But that I don't know that. And it was obviously a lot to do with Heath Ledger's performance, but Batman was like a supporting character in that film, and I don't know. It almost spoke to other issues like
incel stuff.
What's that?
Do you mean with the most recent Batman?
No, with the Dark Knight.
Oh, sorry.
Like there was like the main I guess the main plot and that sort of thing revolved around the Joker, and
that's a good point. It doesn't feel as strictly focused on Batman.
Yeah.
Right. It does feel, yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of it like that it's more of a Nolan world.
It's kind of like twisted characters. Like these characters have good and bad aspects, and then the Joker's talking about like, are we all really that good? Like, you just have to embrace the bad and
and
that sort of thing.
The pacing, I think, is a key part of that.
Yeah.
It starts slow, kind of like that Batman, the most recent one by Matt Reeves. And then it gets that Nolan feel of things are happening, it's movement, it's corruption, all these grand kind of concepts. So I hadn't thought of that. So
I was going to say, I feel like the pacing and the way the movie's shot, it's kind of similar to how the Joker's mind is portrayed in that movie, how it's kind of like anarchy and like it's all over the place and sporadic. I feel like the way the movie's made is kind of suiting it to how the Joker's character is built in that movie, and that's why it's so successful, because it's just chaos and you don't know what's going to happen next, but you can't take your eyes off the screen. It's a bit of unease
as well.
And it's building and it's building and it's building and it's building.
Yeah, and that's I love talking about this stuff. It does build a lot, and it's also interesting to think maybe something like that Batman, it's called The Batman, right?
Yeah,
the most recent one.
Yeah.
Might have been, I don't know how successful it was, I'm guessing quite.
Yeah,
might have really worked because of the way Nolan did it, right? So because you have this really like large kind of grand story, then to have something that's more raw, kind of organic, brutal in a sense, the Batman one, maybe that's kind of why that clicked for you.
They're polar opposites.
They are very different. One thing that I didn't like about the new Batman is I kind of mentioned it. For me, the villain was weak, even though I really like that actor. I can't remember his name.
Paul Dano. He's good.
He's great. For me, I wasn't.
Well, he's actually meant to be the Joker in the new ones for it.
Really?
He'll be good.
I just didn't like the incel villain thing. I found that to be, I don't know, it was just.
You think it's a product of the new world, like the world that we live in now? They're like trying to say like, oh, look, if this guy sits behind his computer for too long, he's going to become like.
Well, that's why I'm really excited.
Like that a bit.
The incel thing is it's funny what you say.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really excited for the next one to see what they do with whether it's bringing the Joker back or it's I think there's rumors that it's going to be Sandman. Not Clayface.
Okay. Sandman's Spider-Man.
Sandman's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Clayface is the Batman one.
Who the
but
fuck is Clayface?
What about if Joaquin Phoenix, that Joker, was in?
Well, I think they're different.
I don't
universes.
get it.
Is
Yeah,
it a
but it's
different
annoying.
universe?
But what is different universe bullshit? It's peddled by Marvel as well. It's
Man, it's the multiverse.
But this is why I think Marvel's lazy. So Marvel go, okay, well,
Sales
what
are
do the
down.
fans want to see?
Bring Robert Downey Jr. back.
Oh yeah, what do the
Yeah.
fans want to see? Oh, they want to see Andrew Garfield and what's his name?
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire back. Oh, okay. So we're just going to say like there's a multiverse with like all these different universes.
Well, there's
where, like,
multiverses in the comics for that.
Just,
so
conveniently Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in this multiverse where and then it's just, I mean, it's clever because now, apparently the new Deadpool, there's like 500 Deadpools and then like Blake Lively is a Deadpool and it's like, oh, meta, haha, so
Really?
funny. But like, and now they bring out Robert Downey Jr. I guess that's a clever idea because they're saying that, I think they're saying that as long as they do it as like he was going to be Iron Man and then something went wrong and he ended up becoming Doctor Doom. You've seen the whole thing about.
I know that he's coming back. I heard that, and I like to be positive.
Yeah,
you can see where this is going.
But it's like fan service. That's fan service is becoming almost too much.
It's a crazy part of it, right?
Yeah.
But is it really fan service though? Because then you have series like She-Hulk, which are just like no one asked for, no one wanted, and no one liked. But they keep making series like that right now.
I love She-Hulk.
I haven't seen She-Hulk.
But everyone's seen the viral clip of just She-Hulk twerking in an office, and it's just like no one asked for this.
The Gen Z
I try to stay off the internet where I can, so I haven't seen that. I've got to come clean.
Just
okay.
don't.
I'll keep
just go
myself.
watch it at the source.
Gotcha. But what I was going to say was that stars sell. It's kind of obvious, but
always have.
And Iron Man 1's one of my favorite movies, so I really like Robert Downey Jr. And it's something that they have to consider. I suppose it's it's like that age-old trade-off of like your commercial incentive versus your sort of artistic pursuit. And having a star helps get people there, right? You might watch it just to go,
Yeah.
is Robert Downey Jr. meant to be there?
Well, you do. Like,
You know?
I will watch that Fantastic Four. Do you
Yeah.
remember the original Fantastic Four film?
I do, yeah.
I feel like I loved that movie because it was like one that was on television. Like there's these movies that were
Jessica Alba.
always on. Yeah, Jessica. They were always on television on like
Yeah.
Channel 7. They're always on repeats, and that was one of them. And I remember watching it so many times and being like, and the villain in that was really good, and nobody knows that actor. Like he's just some random guy, but Doctor Doom in that was really good. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But
That makes me think of two more things. And
Yes.
The first one is that sometimes having someone you don't know in a movie is the best.
great.
Yeah, it's something new, something fresh, and you get excited.
I feel like it's happening a lot
When
now.
building new worlds. Like,
yeah.
apart from Orlando Bloom,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was basically all new.
Viggo
Cast.
Mortensen.
Yeah.
And but they tried to get Russell Crowe for that originally, and he turned it down. And then they went and got Viggo Mortensen. But just the world building through that, or something like Breaking Bad, where they build up.
Oh, I love that show.
Are you guys big Breaking Bad
I
fans?
love that show.
I've watched
so much.
most of it, but where they built up, what's his name, Walter White. What's the actor for that? Bryan Cranswick. Where they built up his character, and I've seen him talk about it a lot, and he talks about how he can do any other movie, any other TV series, but he knows and he understands that role was the role of a lifetime, and he'll never top that.
And he's happy with that. Like lots of people are like, oh, I don't want to
But
get typecast.
he's just
Yeah.
grateful for it. He's not complaining about it, and I think that's awesome.
That is the role of it. Like that was so clever and so like such a bizarre. If you'd pitched that in a vacuum where like that had no one knows about it. Like,
I saw it with Game of
chemistry
Thrones.
teacher turns Breaks Bad. It's like, oh.
HBO were really scared of doing Game of Thrones to start with, because they were kind of like all dragons. Oh, I don't know. We're kind of on the Chernobyl sort of gritty storytelling, and they took a massive risk with Game of Thrones. But even Game of Thrones, building up all of those actors and the world building involved with that. But now I feel like everyone's trying to be safe in the movie industry. They're going for things like they're going for remakes or sequels of things that they know have worked in the past, instead of creating new stories. Like Pirates of the Caribbean, they're just going sequel and sequel and sequel.
Yeah.
Instead of just creating a new whole world with something different. And yes, it's probably a lot harder and financially risky to create a new whole world, but all of these things started somewhere. They all started as a new whole world. And to just keep doing knockoffs or remakes or sequels, it's just a safe financial incentive. And that's why a lot of the movies these days just suck.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before of like, don't you think movies just suck these days? Which
I reckon there's good ones.
But it
out
makes
there,
the good
though.
ones stand out even more,
Yeah.
like the Batman or Dune when they come out, and they're just huge and everyone watches them because there's that need at the moment. There's that real gap in the market to have something new and big. And I know Dune and Batman are both either a remake or a sequel of something. But
yeah, there's always that part of like, well, did you watch it? But yeah, that, I mean, if you look at something like the top 20 grossing Hollywood films in the world, which are probably some of the top grossing films, obviously you have Bollywood, but like a ridiculous number of them are either sequels, prequels, remakes, and part of that is that writing's been around a lot longer than films have. So, from the origins of film, you want to take stories that people like, and it's interesting just as an idea to think of writing a story, or a screenplay in this case, that's purely meant to be watched. It's a visual form, unique and different to something like theatre or ballet or whatever it might be. But yeah, that commercial side of things is interesting. Maybe it's worth, at least in my experience, when I watch stuff that isn't so much commercially driven, like A24 is one of them that took risks, really big risks. And as an industry and a profession, it's an interesting one in that sense, especially in the US, because it is such a risky industry. People spend millions of dollars on just ideas. Personally, I don't think it'll be around that long either. I feel confident that film will be the equivalent of something like the opera or the ballet in not that long, to be honest.
Well, what's your thoughts on all the
Really?
new AI stuff taking over all the
I know,
creative writing?
kind of everyone? Yeah. I don't know too much about what kind of stuff it writes. I've seen a AI that makes video. For I don't even know.
But it's not so much right now. It's in 20 years' time once
Yeah.
it's snowballed and
I don't know. I think
crazy capabilities.
something like A24 is, and that's what they say art house, right? Is that the kind of genre?
It's said it's more experimental. Realistically, there's a lot of things that they're still doing that are like commercially driven, and part of it is it's an A24 film.
Yeah.
So you'll watch it. But maybe part of it is not giving you a happy ending at the end, like giving you some cozy thing to walk away with that the day is all good.
Would one day you want to be a director of movies and make movies? Or
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself one already, to be honest. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, but no,
Like,
sorry.
as in,
Yeah, man. Like, what the hell?
Sorry.
No,
I mean, like the big Hollywood
Disgusting.
sort of like
Bigger budget.
big budget movies.
The only reason I say that is because I usually don't, right? I'm usually too like, I would like to be this. So it's
No,
more
for
just
sure
for
you're-
confidence.
Sorry,
But you are
I
a
apologize. For sure, you're a
yeah.
director now with all the short films you're doing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like big Hollywood style movies. Is that the dream?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a dream, but the idea of having just more of a sample space, more people to see it, to get different feels would be cool. My motivation, I think, is more, at least in the filmmaking side of things, is more, and it sounds kind of crazy, but to just have an impact on cinema, which is kind of wild, and I never thought that would be something I would kind of aspire to. But I would just love for one day someone to say, Johnny, the equivalent of a Johnny, to be like, oh, that film by, it's not even, they don't even have to know who it's by.
By Envyus.
Produced by
Nic
Envyus
Verryn.
Media. It's my favorite. Like that to me would just be the coolest. I don't know why.
That's cool.
And I was thinking about this the other day of, would I care if they knew that I made it? And I definitely wouldn't. And I take a lot of, that's really relaxing and comforting for me to know that even if let's say 1 billion people saw it, right? Some film I made, whether it's on YouTube or whatever.
Well done.
And they didn't know it was me. It's not some, oh, look how humble I am, but I just wouldn't care because I just really like when people enjoy it the same way I do.
Like a Banksy. Like, can you think about that? Like, there's a guy or like a group of guys somewhere, could be a movement, I don't know, but it's just sitting there like, is the ultimate example of that.
Well, Banksy is an interesting one because you have to wonder how deliberate is the I'm anonymous thing, right? How much of it is, well, he hides his identity, or her, I think
You think
it's
it
a guy.
becomes a bit too...
It's great marketing. You got to say
Great
that
marketing.
at least, right? It's so... yeah, and there's a movie on that note called, what's it called? Exit Out the Gift Shop or something like that, which is a documentary made by Banksy about Banksy.
So you think it's all just ego?
without Banksy as well.
It has Banksy, but it's kind of isn't about Banksy. Maybe that's one.
Is he in it?
To check. He is, but in very small quantities.
But we don't know who he is.
He doesn't reveal his
When
identity.
he's at home.
Yeah, maybe Banksy's multiple people.
Maybe I need
know.
to go on Reddit to find who's
Well, that kind of reminds me of a Kanye quote where he talks about, he's like, all the greatest inventors.
He's the opposite of that.
Right.
all the greatest inventors are actually unknown. Like, I want to aspire to be an inventor that creates stuff that's
Right.
unknown. Like, no one knows who created the wheel or a path. People know who created a light bulb, and he talks about that, and it's just a really interesting train of thought, especially coming from someone like Kanye, talking about how he wants to be someone that creates things that become so mainstream and become the norm and last for so long that you forget who created them, that they just become a way of life, or they leave an impression that lasts on a culture or a society for a long time.
Do you reckon he does that, or he's kind of on the road to doing that?
I think
Kanye?
it's way too the way the music industry moves and the sound has been moving, it's way too fast and rapid to tell, especially now long term. But a lot of the stuff he's done has influenced the industry, especially with when he brought out the auto-tune in Dark and Beautiful Twisted Fantasy, or when he brought out the 808s in Heartbreak and 808s, or he sets the trend for the next few years of music when it comes to the production side of things. Because I think when it comes to music production is really, in that sort of genre and scene, there's no one that's really matched him or has the same career as him.
I suppose what comes to mind when you say that is the objects that he listed, things like the wheel or
A path.
path.
Very abstract.
Yeah. Well, to me, I know there was a few more when he listed those things. I can't remember what they were.
Oh, you've seen it as well.
I've seen it, yeah. They're all very useful things. Like a wheel is very useful. It has utility.
Music's not the same.
Maybe it is, but it doesn't strike me as being the same. Adding auto-tune can help people who can't sing become commercially available. Is that something that I would, if there were 4 things of like a wheel, a path, a water fountain, auto-tune, and they said circle one that doesn't fit, I'd probably circle auto-tune.
But you're not thinking outside the box, man.
Maybe
I'm
I'm
thinking
not.
vertically instead of horizontally like Kanye, man.
I might be narrow-minded on that one. Oh, sorry, my hair got no. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if he's truthful in that sense.
Yeah,
I wonder
don't
if he
know.
actually wants to say that, or
That's
if he
the
just
thing.
said it, thought it sounded interesting.
Every week it's something different. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose you can say with someone like Kanye that his music was, as you said, very influential and that makes me think of that question that sometimes I like to think about of what is a genius.
I'd call Kanye a genius just because he's almost got that troubled genius.
Well, it's the Christopher Nolan quote of
That's
you
correct.
either
Die a hero.
die a hero or
Yeah.
live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Yeah. That's a Batman quote.
That's a
right?
crazy-
It's a Dark Knight quote.
That is a crazy quote. Well, maybe there's something of like just doing the obvious stuff. I don't know. That's just something that I've been thinking about of when it comes to genius. Well, there is a part of it which is the narrative, right? Which personally I don't really buy into that much of, you have to be this tortured soul and you have to struggle. And maybe that's true. Maybe like the whole art is suffering thing is true.
Yeah.
But it's when it comes down to that philosophy, it seems to be the easier option, in my opinion, is to, be constantly sleep deprived, doing all these things. Or maybe it's harder, but
Yeah, there's a difference between making yourself suffer and, growing up in a context where
Suffering because you're chasing something and going all in on
but you've
Yeah.
also had like an upbringing that is maybe not as not like obviously I've had a pretty good upbringing. I wouldn't go out there and be a troubled artist. I don't think. I mean, and maybe
People do
maybe
that.
that stops me from getting to genius status because I haven't lived in a difficult context and I don't have trauma from my past. But like I feel like there is.
Well, the great stuff are great because they haven't been done before. Because if it was the same as everything else, well, then why would people bother listening to you over all the hundreds of other things that are the same as you? Like when Lord of the Rings was done, there was nothing like it, and it was done so well that that's why it was so wildly successful.
yeah.
Whereas if it was just like any other action blockbuster coming out in the early 2000s, like
Yeah.
yes, it might have been made well and a few people would have listened to it, but then in 10, 20 years, it just becomes one of those films and it's not a sort of timeless piece like Lord of the Rings has become.
Yeah. In film in particular, there's an interesting relationship between originality and creativity because it's heavily deductive. Like you take from references. It's a massive part of it. Who are your references? Who are your inspirations?
Well, I guess there's Tolkien's writing that world built it already for them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some people, some directors in particular who, and I try to do it myself, they'll go, okay, I'm going to take a bit of this from this director. I'm going to take a bit of that from that writer. I'm going to borrow some of this, bring it together, and it's a new thing.
And that's you. That becomes you.
That's your style now. Which,
Exactly.
Which, yeah, I don't know if that's genius, mate. It seems kind of logical to me.
I think it takes a lot, like for you to go out there in the universe of filmmaking or in music. Like the thing that I will say about Kanye is some of his samples in his older albums and he's like sampling like Otis Redding and stuff is genius, right?
Yeah.
And it almost takes a different type of intelligence and understanding to take from here, because there's a lot to go. There's a lot to take from, and sometimes it'd be hard to like pick from that. And obviously you're talking about originality and you can add your original ideas, but I feel like part of originality is also combining, what people have done in the past, because it's hard obviously to be truly original these days.
Well, that's the
'Cause
thing.
It's likely that something that you're
Everything-
doing has been done before.
Everything that's everything that's original has to have been influenced by something. There's
Yeah.
nothing that's not influenced by something. Like even if you've created an idea yourself and completely come up with it, all of the context of everything that you've interpreted or looked at in that sort of genre or art growing up becomes the influences that gives you the ideas to then spark your new original idea.
But what you were saying about it being logical, do you want to speak like that? It was kind of interesting.
That's just a way that I like to think about it. Like there's a director called Wes Anderson.
Yep.
So you know
He did The Hotel.
Yeah,
movie?
Grand Budapest Hotel and a bunch of other really good movies. I like his movies. I'm not such a fan of him personally, at least the idea of him.
Kind of like Kanye and his music.
Potentially, yeah, like that.
What's that? What's his personally like?
It's not maybe not personally. Sorry, it's more the idea of him, the media, not anything to do with what his actions are.
Yeah.
But something like in terms of logic, he does a lot of things that are really logical, right? So he has very symmetrical framing, and he has really kind of tempo-driven music. It's drivey. The colors are quite vibrant, and there's a lot of kind of aesthetic focus, so that people, there's that psychological part of you that just likes it, right? The human brain, we like something symmetrical.
Aesthetic, yeah.
Right. So I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Of he did those things, and he's very successful. And is that original? And maybe it is. Maybe it's like very original to bring things that already existed, make them work. Maybe not. I don't know, but I find it. I'm skeptical of people who say, "Oh my gosh, that's so new and creative," and because I know there's people like the Anthony Fantano types who are going to go, "Well, it's derived from this '30s film."
Anthony Fantano, I was literally watching him this morning. He's hilarious. You think it's quite? Yeah. It's okay. I feel like we're on the same page there. Though. We're all saying that it's come from somewhere, right? But it's
there has to be an influence. Even Shakespeare got like influence or inspiration from other artists.
I have another question for you guys, by the way.
Okay.
I'm shocked that maybe I missed this, but where does the name come from? Tell me a bit about the name, because I love the name.
My face, apparently, I've got a crooked smile. Thanks, Campbell. And I did last week. Yeah. We didn't even get to make that joke. I was thinking in my head the whole time, it's like, this is literally the Crooked Smile podcast because my tooth was out and we didn't even make the joke on the podcast. So now we're going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, the name...
I really like the name.
...has come from my girlfriend.
Okay.
Well, I'll give kudos where kudos are due. When we were thinking of starting the podcast and didn't have a name, she said you should do the Crooked Smile podcast. Like Crooked Smile, like the J. Cole song.
Oh, right, yeah.
But when I thought about it, and the reason why I decided to go with it is... I've told you this, is because I used to have really bad teeth as well. I've just done Invisalign and fixed some chipped teeth on the bottom row. And I guess a crooked smile, it's not so much about us own like physical smiles, but it's more symbolic of like something that's authentic and that's doesn't necessarily have to be picture perfect, but has its own sort of...
But it's a smile nonetheless, it means you're happy.
Well, it's just authentic and staying true to yourself, and it's kind of like a style that's not so much super professional, super picture perfect, kind of what a lot of people are trying to be today, especially online. But it's more just laid back. It's authentic. It's a conversation with someone where you can just be yourself and get to know about someone and learn about the world they're in, because there's so many different worlds. Like we've learned this from the guests. Every different guest is from a different world, and there's so many different worlds within our world, and learning about that in just like a casual kind of style is kind of like through a good lens or a happy lens with like the jokes and the entertainment we have is kind of, I guess, the symbolism for the crooked smile.
Yeah.
Deep answer.
I love that. I love that.
No, it's because I got a crooked smile. That's me.
I like it. I really like it.
What about Envyus Media? How do you name that?
Who are you envious of?
Envyus Media is ENVYUS, which is not how the word is spelled.
Envious.
Some people hate like
link in
differently
description.
spelled. Yeah. But it honestly, it was just kind of an intuitive thing of, I don't know, I like the sin, envy. I just connect to that for some reason. I don't know. It's an interesting one. What do you envy? Because it's usually not a good thing, right? It's kind of got a dark connotation, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's meant to be a sin.
Envy is like you hate because you want to be someone else so bad that you like hate them almost, kind of thing. That's envy, right?
But then the play on the words with the us, I think, is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it's like, hopefully this is something you like, and maybe it's not the perfect name, but yeah, it's something you can look up to and go, oh, I like that. You know,
It makes you think.
For me, I honestly don't really use it in the kind of darker sense. It's more just
A name.
Yeah, I suppose it is a name. It wasn't too thought out. I just liked the word, and I didn't like the way it was originally spelled.
I feel like that's kind of the same as us. And then as we've kind of formed our brand or image, it's kind of fallen into place with that or become associated with that.
And I knocked my tooth out for it.
Well, to be honest, when you asked me that question, I could give any answer and just try and tie it back to that. But in reality, it's what the audience sees and interprets. It's not so much what we define it as, because when it comes to our content, it's how the audience interprets it as much as we want to try and come across whatever way we want to. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of part of why I brought it up, is because I think it suits the podcast of, you know, it's something a bit lighthearted and there's some fun to it. It's not, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think that's what I think of when I think of a crooked smile. It's just, you're still smiling, as you said.
And it's authentic. I think authentic's the biggest part I like about
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Authentic.
I'm what's the word?
Envious.
Yeah, I suppose envious of your authenticity. I'm impressed by your approach to, and maybe this is too kind of on the nose, but by like having comedic moments and kind of leaning into that, because for me that would be so scary. Like, I think that's
the thing is,
whether they're comedic or not is in the eye of the beholder. But we like to, or at least
we think we're funny, but it's a whole different thing for the audience to think we're funny.
When we do 2-person episodes, it's like, wow, like really we aren't that funny, because when you watch it, well, I guess, but like it's
that's
like
the thing.
When
watching
you're being
yourself
filmed,
back, it's so hard. You're your own worst judge. Or
do you watch all of your episodes?
Well, I have to edit it, so I have to.
Well, yeah, and review.
In the editing process, you end up watching something like 5 to 10 times, or even more.
Yeah.
So.
The updates I do.
Like, imagine a audio engineer, the amount of times they've listened to the song before the final product comes out. And how they don't have sound fatigue.
So sick of it by the end of it. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Hadn't thought about that. For a movie, it's a lot of times, but to make it's a song, that'd be horrible. You'd surely you'd hate the song by the end of it.
And then you got to go perform it for months.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's coming up? What's in the future for Envyus Media?
Well, I should also what's in the future is this documentary is a big part of what I'm doing. So I will be posting stuff, updates, and little bits of behind the scenes and insight on Envyus Media, the Instagram, and that's probably the main thing. Apart from that, I'm going to continue to try and grow the business in a way that allows me to still do both, which is quite exciting. I'd love to say I've got travel plans, but I kind of have had to prioritize. Focusing on the business and putting my clients first. But hopefully down the line I can do a bit of that. I still surf a lot, so that's something that that I do a bunch, and I have an Instagram for that as well called Holiday Surf. So if you like surfing content, maybe you'll check it out. But yeah, that's kind of the main things that are on the horizon for me.
Awesome. Well, wishing you all the best for the future. Thanks very much for coming on today.
Great chat. That flew by.
Really enjoyed today's episode. If you're still watching, you stuck around to the end, you're a real one. I know Robbie McGregor's going to be here listening. Robbie, I love you.
Good on you,
the
Robbie.
cinephile chat is good, so I reckon you can. Yeah. I reckon we don't talk about movies enough on the podcast.
But thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nic.
Yeah.
All the best for the future.
You guys as well. Yeah, thank you.